introduce our first speaker. Spirit and Science, an inclusive journey. Bob McDonald, Order of Canada, host, CBC, Works and Corps. I would say, I'll venture to say that Bob McDonald is a household name in Canada. When it comes to science, he has, as you can see, the world in the palm of his hands. A Canadian author and journalist, CBC's chief science correspondent and host of Quirks and Quarks, a program that draws some 800,000 listeners each week. Bob's love of science and his passion for sharing this knowledge with both young and old has brought him many accolades and honors, including the Order of Canada and the 3 top national awards for science communications. Bob has also received honorary degrees recognition from some 9 Canadian universities and has won the Gemini Awards for his ability to make science come alive for young people from preschool to young adult level. He's also a prolific writer on science and related topics. We are honored indeed to have Bob as our first keynote speaker to lead off the first module, Spirit and Science, an Inclusive Journey, with his reflections on water from a global perspective. Please welcome Bob McDonald.
Thank you very much, Eric. Okay. Let's see if our technology works here. Does that technology work? There we are. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Eric, for the kind words. Before I begin, you all have on your table some glasses and a jug. Please pour yourself a glass and raise it. Let's have a toast to dihydrous monoxide. To dihydrous monoxide, the reason we're all here. 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen bound together in a liquid, solid, and gaseous state on this planet. The dihydrous monoxide. Here. Ooh. Marvelous stuff. Marvelous stuff. It's sort of a funny looking picture for me. It's sort of odd to be standing up to myself. Here, let's see if we can duplicate this here. Anyways, I want to talk today about perspectives, very, very large perspectives like this, which we've only gained recently. When I was born, we didn't know this. This globe, which you can buy at science shops, museums, and whatnot, is pretty accurate. It's a blow-up globe, but it's based on satellite images. So it's a pretty good representation of the Earth. And when I was born, I just officially became a senior this year. I had to apply for old age pension. Why do they call it that? It should be a Lifetime Achievement Award from the government of Canada. Anyway, when I was born, we did not know what the Earth looked like. We did not know what the Earth looked like. We had sailed around it, we'd flown around it, we'd mapped it, but we didn't have a picture of it because I was born before Sputnik, the very first satellite. The entire space program has happened within my lifetime, which is astounding. We haven't seen the Earth except within my lifetime. And I actually met the person who took the very first whole Earth picture, and our technology's not doing that, so we'll do it this way. His name was Bill Anders, and he was on the very first mission to the moon. They didn't land. They just went there, they went around the moon a few times and came back in 1968. And they were the first to actually leave planet Earth and go to another heavenly body. They did it over Christmas. And when they went around the far side of the moon, they went out of touch with Houston for a while, and then they came back around, reestablished contact with Earth, and there it was. And I asked him, I said, so what was it like to take this famous Earthrise picture? You know what he said? We weren't planning to take that. That was not part of our itinerary. Our job was to photograph the moon. We were there to look at the landing sites and make detailed maps so that when they landed, they know where they are. So that was our job. He said it wasn't until we looked out the window and there was the Earth, and they went, holy cow, look at that. And then Jim Lovell, the commander, said, "Did you get a picture?" Oh, yeah, good. Hadn't even thought of it. And yet this is one of the most profound pictures ever taken, because it was the first time in human history that we saw ourselves from afar. And we saw ourselves as one single unit. One single unit. And I'm a little close. If you hold up your thumb, if the Earth disappears behind your thumb, that's the right scale for this picture. So from the moon, the Earth is smaller than your thumb. It's small. So the first thing we learned about our planet is that it is not very large. It's small. And in the foreground here, the moon itself, you notice the horizon is very sharp because there's no air. And the sky is black because there's no air. The moon will kill you. I've met several who have been to the moon. It's one of the great things about being a journalist. You get to meet amazing people. And Buzz Aldrin, who was on the first moon landing with Neil Armstrong, he said, you know, the moon's a really interesting place, but it's not a very nice place. And he's right. It'll kill you. You have to bring the Earth with you if you go to the moon. You have to wear a spacesuit with air and pressure inside it, or you will die. You can only live there for about 15 seconds before your blood boils and your eyeballs burst and your ears burst and you're gasping for air that's not there. It wouldn't be a very nice death on the moon. So the moon is very hot stuff. The Earth, this little blue oasis, surrounded by black, that will also kill you. The vacuum of space filled with cosmic and solar radiation. It's a deadly place. And here we have this little tiny oasis. Well, since this picture was taken, we've been to other planets. We've been to every planet in our solar system with robots, and I've been very fortunate to follow a lot of that over my career. And the latest one was actually a failure. It was the Europeans. They sent a robot there that was in two pieces. One went into orbit, and it's still working. But the little flying saucer at the bottom there tried to land on Mars, and it almost made it. Now you got to remember, landing on Mars is really hard because there's no slowing down until you get there. They come screaming straight at Mars at 21,000 kilometers an hour. That's like 10 times the speed of a bullet. So you come screaming into the atmosphere, and then you're hiding behind a heat shield, and it heats up to about 1,500 degrees on the outside as you hit the atmosphere, and then you slow down, and you put up with all these G-forces. Then a parachute opens while you're still supersonic, and that slows you down even more. Then you get rid of the parachute, and then finally at the end they fire little rocket engines, and it's supposed to softly touch down. Well, it did all of that until it got to the point. Is there a laser pointer like this? Oh, there it is. Until it got right here, where it was supposed to fire its engines and let the parachute go. But for some reason, the computer thought that it had actually landed when it was still up here, so the engines only fired for a few seconds. So it did a perfect landing, but it was still 3 kilometers up, and then just fell the rest of the way. And instead of looking like this on the surface, which it was supposed to, it's a smoking hole in the ground. There it is right there. That's what it looks like. There's its parachute down here, but it's just a hole in the ground. So they lost it. That's unfortunate. However, they are planning to go back in a few years with a little rover to drive around. We'll see how well they do. But we have had many other spacecraft go there, and this is a selfie taken by the largest one, an American one called Curiosity. It has a camera on the end of an arm that's used to look around, but it turned it back on itself and did one of these. But I notice when people take selfies, especially the girls, they pump their lips out. You do? Why do they do that? Anyway. So that's what this rover did. Otherwise, this picture would have been taken by a Martian, and we haven't got any Martians there yet. But this rover, which is quite big, if it was sitting here on the stage, it would pretty well fill the stage. It's about the size of a Mini Cooper. It weighs a ton. It's the largest thing we've ever had there. Nuclear powered. It's been running for several years and will probably run for another decade. And it's got a Canadian instrument on it too. Built in Ontario, it's an X-ray spectrometer. It's this thing you just point it at a rock, and it'll tell you the chemical composition of that rock. It uses X-rays to blast it. So what these rovers have found is that the area where this one landed used to be a lake. It used to be a lake. They found perchlorates in the soil, which are formed in water, and it is continuing to climb a mountain, and they're finding all these layers on Mars, which is the geological history of Mars. So these robots are geologists. They go there and they're exploring the past. And what we have found from both the rovers that are on the ground and orbiters that are going around Mars is that it used to be a wet planet. There used to be two blue planets in our solar system, the Earth and Mars. It had a big ocean that covered most of the northern hemisphere. It had a big sea in the southern hemisphere, about the size of the Mediterranean. It has a huge canyon system that probably had water running through it, running across the center, and 4 gigantic volcanoes here. So there was a time when you could go swimming on Mars. That time, about 3.5 billion years ago. 3.5 billion years ago, which is about the time that life was first emerging here on this planet. So did life emerge there? We don't know. That's why we're there. We're trying to find fossils, trying to find signs of life maybe today. They haven't found anything yet, but they have found organics. Trace, but they have found organic chemicals. It's interesting. So what happened? Mars used to be wet. Well, it's a small planet. It's only half the size of the Earth. It doesn't have as much gravity. So its atmosphere leaked off into space, and its volcanoes went quiet. A lot of atmosphere comes from the inside of the planet. Our atmosphere is always being replenished every time a volcano goes off. That stopped on Mars. So the water that was in the lakes and the oceans froze underground. There's now a very large permafrost layer on Mars, and there's ice caps at the North and South Pole. So that's what happened. And the hydrogen, if the water broke apart, went off into space. The oxygen bound with the rocks and made them rusty, which is why Mars is red. So it went into an ice age and didn't come back. It did not recover from an ice age. Talk about climate change. We've been through 5 ice ages. We get cold and warm and cold and warm. We're due for another one, you know. My very first job at the CBC in 1976, my first job was doing a documentary for Ideas on CBC Radio. The topic, climate change. In 1976. And back then, the topic was running hot or cold. There was a debate back then. Is it going to get cold? Because ice age warm periods are about 10,000 years long. And then we go into the next cold period. Well, it's been 12,000 years since the last ice age, so we're overdue for a cold period. So there was a group of scientists saying it's going to get cold. But there was another group saying, no, we're putting carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. It's not going to get cold. It's going to get warm. So that debate was going on in 1976. It's amazing. We've been talking about this for so long. So we go to these other planets because they're models of how change can come about, dramatic change. Beyond Mars, if you go to Jupiter, you get to these giant planets, and I'm just showing you this. We'll never land on Jupiter. It's made of nothing but gas. Gas and liquids. It's a huge drip. But there's the Earth compared to Jupiter. Again, we're small. You could put 1,000 Earths inside Jupiter. 1,000 Earths inside Jupiter. We humans think the Earth is so big, but it's not. It's tiny. And a lot of the planets that we're finding out around other stars are like Jupiter. Even just this storm right here, the Great Red Spot, you can put the Earth in there 2 or 3 times. A storm on Jupiter. So we're tiny. But what we're finding around these big planets is that they have a lot of moons. 50 or 60 moons going around them. Saturn has 62 moons going around them. And some of these moons are turning out to be more interesting than the planets. One in particular is called Europa. It's going around Jupiter. It's a little smaller than our moon, but almost the same size. But it's white. And if you were to hold it in your hand, it would be like a cue ball in billiards. Totally smooth all the way around. No mountains, no valleys. The whole moon is smooth because it's covered in ice. It's covered in ice. The entire moon, pole to pole. It's a snowball. And they've since gone by Europa many times and done various experiments on trying to look through that ice. And what they've found is that underneath the ice, there's an ocean. There's an ocean of salt water underneath the ice. Now, they don't know quite yet how thick that ice is, many kilometers thick, and whether or not the ocean would be liquid or slushy, but it probably is liquid. The important thing is that the amount of water on this moon is more than we have on Earth. There's more water on this moon of Jupiter than we have in all of our oceans combined. That's astounding. And if you want to look for life, a lot of exobiologists are saying this is where we should be looking. We have to go there and do some ice fishing. We should send some Canadians to show how to do it. Right, there's a pretty long line. You've got to go that. But maybe there's life under there. Maybe there are hot water vents like we have in our oceans. You know, off the coast here, we have these cracks in the floor of the ocean, and hot water comes up, and then you get a whole ecosystem that lives down there, living on the chemistry of the water, not sunlight. They're not photosynthetic, they're chemosynthetic. Because where they live, it's dark and it's cold and under huge pressure, but that doesn't bother them. They're fine. They're independent of the sun. Could that be going on this moon of Jupiter? We don't know. And there is a mission being planned to go there and start to study it. But ice, water on a moon. So there's water on Mars that's frozen. There's water on this moon that's both frozen and liquid. Beyond Jupiter, Saturn also has one of these ice moons called Enceladus. And this one, not only does it have an ocean, but the surface is cracked. And some of that water is boiling out because it hits the vacuum, it turns into a vapor and ice crystals, and it shoots out in these geysers. And we have a spacecraft in orbit going around Saturn right now, and they actually flew right through those geysers. They did a really close pass to the moon and flew right through them and took some samples, and they found water ice and organics. Organic chemicals in a moon like that. It doesn't prove life, but at least the chemistry of life is there. It's great on a moon. So another ocean there. And as we go further out, we find comets out beyond Saturn. And there was another European mission that landed on one of these comets last year, a remarkable mission. This comet is called 67P. This picture has been really brightened up because the comet is about as black as coal. If you were there, you'd actually have trouble seeing with your eyes because it's so dark. So they had to enhance this picture. But they went into orbit around it. It's also not very big. That whole comet would fit within Kelowna. It's only about 6 kilometers from one end to the other. But it's ice. It's ice. It's water ice, covered in dirt, covered in black dirt. And when they landed on this thing, they were planning to land here in this flat spot. But unfortunately, and the lander had hooks in its feet. Because when it landed, it was supposed to hang on. The problem when you try landing on something that's really, really small, there isn't much gravity. There's almost none at all. So when you hit the surface, you bounce. But well, these hooks in its feet didn't grab on. And so it did bounce. It went 12 kilometers back up in the bounce. So, in fact, it took so long to come back down again that the comet actually rotated. So it bounced from here and ended up here in the shadow. And only ran for a couple of days and its batteries ran out. But they did manage to actually do a landing. Ice, water ice in comets. It's everywhere. And then last summer we saw Pluto for the first time. Pluto for the first time summer before last. And that was turned out to be an ice ball. Again, it's made of ice. But here there are 3 kinds of ice. Water ice makes the body of the planet. There's a rocky core, an ice mantle, like we have here. And out there it's so cold, it's minus 200 degrees or more. So the ice is like iron. On top of that is methane ice, which gives you this reddish stuff. Methane actually starts out blue like it is here. But then when it sits in the sun for a while, there's a chemical reaction and it turns sort of reddish. And then the third kind of ice is this big spot here, nitrogen. Frozen nitrogen. You're breathing nitrogen right now. Most of our atmosphere is nitrogen. It's only 20% oxygen. We live on the oxygen, but you're breathing nitrogen. Pluto is so cold the air freezes. And the interesting thing with nitrogen is that it's viscous. It moves. It would be hard to make a snowball out of nitrogen ice. It would be white. It would look like snow. But if you held it in your hand long enough, it would actually drip through your fingers. It would flow like a glacier, but very quickly. So it's moving. There are glaciers on Pluto made of nitrogen ice that are moving among ice mountains. I'm not making this up. And there are mountains there that are as tall as our Rockies. 12, 14,000 foot mountains. made of ice. So these are the peaks and the glaciers flowing down between them out onto this vast plain. And they now believe that under the surface of Pluto, there's a liquid ocean. So again, an ocean. We have hidden oceans inside Pluto, inside moons of Jupiter and Saturn, and underground on Mars. So water is really common. Water is really common. It's all over the place. And as we looked out to other planets, oh, by the way, Pluto also has a blue sky. They went behind Pluto and looked back towards the sun, and they saw that the sky on Pluto is blue because it has a methane atmosphere. Methane absorbs red and gives you blue. So Pluto is going to be quite an interesting place if we ever get back there. Too bad it takes 10 years just to get to it. That's how far away it is. So as we've gone to other planets going around other stars, they're approaching 3,000 planets now that we found around other stars. It looks like every star that you see in the night sky has planets. Planets are everywhere. They're so common. But a lot of them are super, super close to their stars, at least the ones we've found so far. And they always keep one face towards their star, just the way our moon always keeps one face towards us. You always see the same face of the moon. As it goes around us, it always keeps its face to us like this. So that would mean that these planets, if they're solid, if they're like the Earth, would have one side that's a permanent desert, and the sun would not move in the sky. The sun would always be in the same spot. And the other side would be permanently frozen and never see the sun. It would be dark eternally. Would there be a band around the middle in the temperate zone there? Yeah, maybe. But I don't know what kind of weather you would get on a planet like that. So these are just hypothetical. This is a drawing. They have found a couple of Earth-like planets. They're called super-Earths. They're bigger than ours. They're rocky. And they're in what's called the Goldilocks zone. They're not too hot. They're not too close to the stars to be too hot. They're not too far away to be too cold. They're just right, like we are. So they're not hot like Venus. They're not cold like Mars. They're just right. Do they have atmospheres? Do they have water? Do they have life? We don't know. We just know that they're in that zone. That's great. But if they do have life, will we be able to get to them? Will we be able to find it? Will we be able to talk to them? Well, this one here, its distance is, what's it say here? This is from the sun. Where is it? 20 light years. 20 light years from here, which is close. 20 light years. So if there are people living there, or creatures living there, and we want to say hello, first of all, we don't have rockets that can go that far. We can't go 20 light years away. We can't even go 1 light year. In fact, we can't even go to the moon. You know, the 50th anniversary of the moon landing is coming up, 2019. It'll be 50 years since we landed on the moon, and we cannot send people to the moon today. What happened? I thought by the time I'd be dyeing my hair gray like I am now, I'd be taking holidays on this. It didn't happen. Anyway, so we don't have rockets that can go there. If we want to send a message, send out a radio signal and say, hey, everybody home. It'll take 20 years for that message to get there. And then if there's somebody there, if they hear it, if they understand it, if they can answer, and if they feel like answering, it'll be another 20 years for their, yeah, what do you want? To come back. 40 years just to say hello. Will the people who sent the message even be alive? And this is a close one. A lot of the planets are hundreds of light years away. So it'll take like 500 years just to say hello. So, yeah, there are probably Earth-like planets out there, but they're very, very far away. We're all spread out in distance and in time. So what it comes down to is, while the universe is probably alive, it's generally a deadly place, and here we are. Here we are. This was a picture, I think it's now the logo for a bank, but this was a project that NASA did in the millennium to gather together satellite photos of the Earth at night and put them all together into one big montage. It's the Earth at night. And I find this very metaphorical because it shows humanity. It shows us. And I have a short video here, and I'm hoping I can make this work for you. We'll see if this technology works. Okay, so here we go. Here. There. There. And here. picture from the International Space Station is sped up quite a bit, showing the Earth at night. The yellow dots are cities, and the white ones are thunderstorms. Northern Lights there at the top. North is not always at the top. Our fires are visible from space. Our fires are visible from space. You might recognize a couple things going by. Where are we here? I have no idea what that is. You might say, well, here's England and Ireland going by. A bit of Europe. See Paris there. Our fires are visible from space. These lights that you see is light that we don't use. We don't use light that shines up. We put lights in the ceiling so they shine down on our feet so we can see where we're going. So in other words, light that shines up is wasted light. And this is what we do. It's beautiful, but we throw away more than we use. We throw away light, we throw away heat, we throw away food, we throw away water. And to me, one of the first steps in getting ahead to where we need to deal with these issues is to deal with efficiency. And just look at how much we use and how much we throw away. With energy, with everything. And it'll be a wonderful first step. Okay, now I want to go back to where I was. There we go. Narrow down. And. Arrow up. Okay. Sorry. We're already there. Not choice. And let's go back to the current slide. Current slide. Yay! Hey, technology work. Here's a picture of Vancouver taken in infrared light, showing all the heat coming off the city. And again, energy that we throw away. We just throw away so much. You know the cars we have now, if they have a combustion engine in them, the combustion engine is about 150 years old now. And people say, well, if you buy this tiny little car with a small engine in it, it gets really great mileage. It doesn't. It doesn't. The combustion engine, by its nature, can never be more than about 20% efficient. 20%. That means of all the energy that's in the tank of gas, only 20% of that is turning the wheels. The rest of it, we throw away as waste heat. Heat engines, you got to take heat away to make it run. So it goes out the tailpipe and it goes out the radiator. 20% is turning the wheels. And here's another way to think about that. Suppose you went to fill up your car, and you have a small car, and you're going to fill it up. So what's a tank of gas worth now here in Kelowna? Anybody drive a small car? 50 bucks? Okay, 50 bucks. So what's 20% of 50 bucks? Don't ask me. 10? 10? Yeah. Okay. There are three kinds of mathematicians. Those who can count and those who can't. Okay, 10 bucks is 20% of 50. So how would you feel if you went to fill up your car, you put the nozzle in the tank, you go bing bing up until 10 bucks and stop at 10. Take the nozzle out and point it at the ground and pour $40 on the ground. How would you feel about that? You'd probably be arrested for polluting. But that's exactly what we do. We're only using 10 out of that 50 to run the car. That's stupid. That's stupid. We don't see heat. So you're not seeing all that waste energy. You don't see this. So that's why we believe that it's good. An electric motor is 80% efficient. It uses 80% of the energy you put into it with hardly any waste heat. So electric motors make a lot more sense. So that's an example of the waste that we don't even see. We forget about. We forget about. Here's a street in Vancouver with trees on it. The trees are blue because they're cool. Just planting trees makes a difference in our heat management of our city. But all those roofs, look at how hot they are with the sunshine on. Roofs are black, which absorb sunlight. And then we put air conditioning on the inside to keep them cool. What if roofs were white? It would reflect the light and cut down the amount of heat. There's simple stuff we can do. It's not rocket science. So, I wrote a book. Please buy it. This is it. This is also, I met the guy who took this picture. This was the very last picture that was ever taken by a human being on the whole Earth on the very last mission to the moon, Apollo 17 in 1972. And any picture you see of the whole Earth today is taken by a satellite. They don't go high enough on the space station to see the entire Earth. They're only 400 kilometers up, which is about here to Victoria. That's how high the space station is. So on the scale of this globe, they're about... You can see the curve of it, but you can't see the whole thing. You gotta go pretty high up before you see the whole thing. So this picture was taken on the way back from the moon on the very last mission. Look what's in the middle. Right there is Africa, and over here is Ethiopia, Tanzania, Kenya, and that is where we have found the oldest remains of our human ancestors, the Australopithecines who preceded us, the first tool makers who used stone, who used their hands to make stone tools. And quite a long way we've come since then. I thought it's kind of poetic that we took a picture of our own beginnings. But just to round out this perspective on this little rock that we live on. We are covered in water. We call ourselves the blue planet. But just how much water do we really have? And I need a volunteer to help me out with this. Would somebody like to volunteer? Oh, sure, why not? Can you bring the jug and your glass of water with you, please? So, this is a demonstration. You probably know all this stuff already, but do this with kids. If you're talking to kids or you're visiting schools, this is a great demonstration to really illustrate just how much water the Earth really has. Hi. How are you? Tony. Hello, Tony. Come over here so everybody can see. Say hi to the nice people. Say nice. Okay, so Tony, you are going to represent all of humanity. I'll take the jug. And so we're supposed to drink, how many glasses are you supposed to drink a day? 8? Do you drink 8 glasses a day? No. Anybody drink 8 glasses a day? Good. Anyway, so where are we now? 7 billion and counting humans on planet Earth, all needing 8 glasses of water a day. So you represent all of humanity. This glass will represent all the water on planet Earth. So out of all of the water on planet Earth, everything that the planet has, how much is actually available for human consumption? How much? So go ahead, have a nice little drink. Oh, wait, sorry. I have to take some away because we can't actually drink most of the water in the world because it's salt. I have to subtract the ocean, so I'll just take this. Yep. So out of all the water in the world, how much of it is salty? Quarter? No. Half? More than that. 3/4? More than that. It's about 90%. So 90% of the world's water. So there's 10% left. So there's the fresh water in the world. So go ahead and have a nice drink of fresh water. Oh, wait! I have to take away some more. We can't drink most of the fresh water in the world because it's frozen. It's in Antarctica, which you can see in this picture. Most of it's in Antarctica or Greenland or our glaciers, which you will hear this afternoon from Bob that we're doing a good job of melting. But we have to subtract the ice. So of all the fresh water in the world, which is only 10% of the total, how much of that is frozen? What do you think? Half? More? 3/4? More? About 90%. Most of the fresh water in the world is frozen. So, getting thirsty? Yeah, where's your thing? Okay, go ahead, enjoy it. Wait. Too bad. Okay, she just consumed civilization's water. Okay, so I have to take away some more. After you take away the ice, there's the water that's in deep aquifers. Deep aquifers, not the groundwater that we tap with our wells, but deep aquifers. So I've got to take away some of that. The deep aquifers, although the oil companies in Alberta are doing a good job of trying to get to that stuff. And then, oh wait, there's still more. There's water that's in the plants. They're using it. It's in the stems and the leaves of the plants. So I've got to take away that. Right. Oh. And one more. Any idea? It's in the air. It's in the clouds. It hasn't fallen yet. Clouds weigh a lot. So after you subtract what's in the clouds, what's in the plants, what's deep underground, what's frozen, and what's salty, you are left with the water that's in our lakes and rivers and groundwater. The fresh water available to 7 billion people. And out of the glass, what do we get? Go nuts. Enjoy. What you get?
Not very much.
Yeah?
Like, what, 1/8 of a teaspoon?
A drop?
A
About
few drops.
a few drops. Well, that was too much. Sorry, I didn't do it. It's one drop. One drop. Thank you very much. You've been a good sport. Oh, you did that. There. Enjoy it. Yeah. By the way, thank you. Yeah, one drop out of a glass. 0.03%. 0.03% of all the water on the earth. And what's interesting about this stuff is that this dihydrous monoxide that we have is the same water that the earth has always had. This came out of volcanoes when the earth was new. And it came from comets and asteroids that fell from space in the early days. The earth had the crap beat out of it in the early days. All the planets did. So this water's been around, it's almost as old as rock. This water's been through a dinosaur. Have another drink, enjoy it. It's been through a dinosaur. It's been through the ancient Romans and Sumerians and whoever else came before us. In this case, probably somebody you know. Water's remarkable. The reason we haven't run out is that it constantly cleans itself. Every time it evaporates through the water cycle, it leaves behind the contaminants. What a wonderful feature. It cleans itself. So if we want to clean water, just leave it alone. Let it clean itself. Stop putting stuff into it and it'll clean itself. That's one thing. But in terms of how much we have, yeah, there isn't much for humanity to drink, but the planet itself doesn't really have that much. As I said, the moon and Jupiter has more than we do. If I was to take this ball and put it into a swimming pool, submerge it, and pull it out, the film of water that would be sticking to this is the depth of our oceans. That's the scale of the oceans to this rock. So we live on a wet rock. We live on a wet rock. And the U.S. Geological Survey did an interesting scale here of all our water. We scooped it all up and made one big drip. That's what it would look like. The big one is the oceans. The little one is the fresh, and the tiny, tiny one there is the fresh water available to us. Not much water. Not only that, we don't have much air. If you slice an apple in half, the skin of the apple is the thickness of our atmosphere to scale. Our atmosphere is just a thin bubble of air. You can almost walk out of it. If you climb our tallest peaks, you go to Mount Everest or K2, and you stand on the peaks, if you take off your oxygen mask, you can't stay there very long, you will die. Because you're already above most of the troposphere where all of our life exists. You can walk out of our atmosphere. So we have this little rock, little wet rock inside a thin bubble of air. That's where we live. And then when you look at where humans can live, most of the planet, 71% of it is water that we can't live on. The bottom is frozen. The top is a frozen ocean, which we're melting. Now look at all the brown spots. Look at the brown. The Sahara Desert going across here in the Middle East. Gobi Desert over there in Asia. Kalahari Desert is south. Australia is almost all desert. Southern United States desert. Atacama Desert. You know, a lot of brown. There's not a lot of green. There's not a lot of green left. And here in BC, we've got so much green and so much water, we take it for granted. Just turn the tap on and it's there. And in Canada, we have almost 20% of that drop. Almost 20% of that drop is in Canada. We are the water keepers. We are the water keepers. So there's a stewardship issue there, and there's a management issue. So your work is cut out for you. Your work is cut out for you to not only manage this precious resource, but to get the word out of how precious it really is. It's astounding how precious it is, and that this is it. This is it. This is all we have. This little tiny globe right here. We can't go live on Mars. A few people will, but we can't move humanity there. It's a horrible, cold, awful place with no oxygen in its air. Mars will kill you. Most places we know will kill you. This is it. So, Let's take care of it. We can do that. I actually have faith in humanity. I think we're smart. We've got great education systems here in Canada. We've got great technology that can resolve the water issues of both supply and quantity and quality. And if we take care of the water, by default, we take care of climate change. Because climate change always shows up in water. The glaciers disappearing, bad storms, whatever, it's always water. So by taking care of the water issues, we take care of climate and we take care of human health. Because if we could provide clean water to everyone on Earth, it would solve so many problems in Africa with disease and whatnot, waterborne diseases. So I wish you well in your quest. I wish you well. But get out there and talk to young people. Tear them away from their devices. Tear them away from their overprotective parents. Take them out into the woods. Take them to a river. Put your hand on their shoulders from behind and shove their face in it. River, water, nature, earth, get them out there. Kids are nature deprived. Get them out there and tell them what a beautiful, beautiful, rare earth we really live.